Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today's presentation, we will explore the drawing of shiny objects. We will be focusing on silverware, and for this class purposes, we will refer to our drawings as hyperrealism. Many artists find reflective surfaces challenging to draw. With key techniques and observation, sparkling results can be achieved quickly. Did you like my little pun there? The goal is to simplify the process and give the knowledge to create gleaming silverware. So reflective surfaces are fascinating because they don't just have their own color. They also show what's around them. So they actually show everything. So here we can see the photograph, the camera. Drawing these surfaces forces the artist to observe closely. Where is the light coming from? What objects are being reflected? How does the shape of the silverware distort those reflections? Mastering this will improve drawings of shiny objects and sharpen observational skills in general. The process will be broken down into manageable steps, making it accessible for everyone, regardless of their drawing experience. Drawing shiny objects like silverware can seem challenging, but it is a rewarding experience that teaches you to truly see. And once you learn how to draw them, you will see that everything else is much easier. It's all about understanding how light interacts with a smooth surface and then translate those observations that you see onto paper. Sometimes it's better to not even think about the object, but just look at the shapes. Like, for example, look at where the light hits the hardest in this teapot. It's right in the center in that little white circle. And then see how it changes as it moves over the other things that are being reflected, and even onto the surface of the table where the teapot is sitting. So we can see the hands, and then that kind of a rounded edge is actually the table. So if instead of thinking of it like a table, we just think of it as shapes. So we see one shape after another shape after another shape. This presentation will guide you through the process step by step, and it will help you to achieve realistic and sparkling results. So first of all, what do we have to think about when we start drawing our silverware? The outline, and what are we observing? So here we start with accuracy. What does the line really look like? So we're not worried about the shapes yet. We're really worried about the outside line. A realistic drawing starts with an accurate outline before highlights and shadows are even considered. You have to get the basic shape right. So if it's off, the whole thing is going to be off. Pay close attention to the curves, the thickness, and how the different parts of the silverware connect. This is where hyperliteral or hyperrealism, this is where that term comes in the exercises. Draw exactly what you are seeing. If you are looking at your drawing more than you're looking at your object, then you're making it up in your head. So the rule of thumb is that 30% of the time you should be looking at your paper. 70% of the time, you should be looking at the object that you're drawing. You cannot assume the shape. You have to see it. You have to observe it. It is the outline. If the outline is off, it will affect the entire drawing, and it'll take up a lot of time, and you'll end up with a bad drawing, and you miss that crucial first step. So begin by drawing a basic outline. Take your time. Observe the curves, the angles. Think of it like a blueprint for your final drawing. And you should draw it very light. And here we've got kind of a dark outline, but really you should draw a very light pencil line. So it's not something that when you erase that you're going to still see if you don't want to have certain lines there. Don't be afraid to adjust and refine your outline until it's accurate. Do it over and over. This is like a step that you have to get right. All right. Then the next step is, how do we decode all of the light and the dark, the reflections? How do we decode them? So to make something look shiny, it's not like velvet. Velvet is fuzzy. This is not that. This has a strong contrast between the light and the dark. You have to think about looking at a piece of silverware. You'll see that the areas that they're almost pure white, and then there are other areas that are completely almost black. and they reflect the shadows or the objects in the environment. So the illusion of shiny metal is created by the dramatic contrast. Instead of traditional shading, like soft edges, you actually are drawing reflection. Identify the brightest highlight and the darkest shadow. Notice how they appear next to each other often on the metal. You're not just shadowing randomly, right? You're really drawing the object of these reflections. So what is it, that you see versus what, is there? And you can see like the light may have changed slightly when this drawing was made, because you can see how the shadow is just slightly different. But see how the shadow even changes? Like the shadow goes from like harder, darker areas, like in the neck of the spoon, and then there's like a softer area where the spoon curves up. So you're not, again, just doing random shadowing. You want to start with a HB pencil, probably initially, before switching over to a 4B and then finally a 6B. I wouldn't say that this is a project that you want to do completely with your ebony pencil, because your ebony pencil is going to give you a consistent black, really black line. So you want to go with something lighter to begin with and then move into the other areas. You should have these pencils in your pencil kit. I'll also be using, you can use a white charcoal later on, right? And I have a lot of white charcoal in the classroom that you can use. And we also will be using tortillon stumps, which is a way to blend. Take time to really see the reflections and the shapes. They aren't random. They follow the contour of what it is that you're drawing of the silverware. If the silverware is curved like a spoon, the shadow and the reflection will be curved. If the surface is twisted, the reflection will be twisted. Don't try to draw a shiny spoon. Draw the abstract shapes of the light and the dark. That is how you will be successful. It helps to squint your eyes a little bit to see the details and see the main shapes of the light and the dark more clearly. Think of it like drawing a map of light and dark surfaces, not drawing a spoon. Now, this is a complex subject. It might not seem like a complex subject, but it is, even though the spoon is simple. There's a lot of changes in value in the spoon. And there we can see we're just sort of drawing the very outline of where some of those changes in value take place. Now, they're ever so slight, because if you look over here at the spoon in the center at the top, you're going to see that there's like a grayish area, right? And so that's reflected by the outlined shape that we've created. You want to keep your sketching loose. We don't want to draw all those little tiny intricate lines right away. We just want to have plain areas of contrast. You want to work slowly, maybe 10-15 minutes, and start to bring in and take breaks, because honestly your eyes can get tired. This is actually a very serious type of concentration that you're doing. When you take breaks, it allows you to take the drawing in pieces and stop and start and stop and start, which makes it a little easier than to just complete the whole drawing in one session. This gives your mind a bit of a rest. Start by adding very light applications of material on the surface and think about the darker values, but leaving open the areas of highlight, because the white charcoal will not cover over the top of the graphite. So that means when you're going to be drawing the lightest areas, you're not going to put any pencil marks on there. You're going to leave that plain, just the color of your paper, because then you can come back with the white pencil or the white charcoal and you can put in those really bright highlights. You have to be mindful here of where these highlights are located so that we don't add white charcoal again, on top of graphite, that we add them into the proper location. You want to plan out some of the slightly darker areas with another application of the HB graphite before switching over to a blending tortillon. Start by blending some of the material into the tooth or texture of the paper. We're going to use some of our Canson paper for this, and everyone should have gotten some of that in their kit. And it's used for pastel and for this type of drawing. You're going to use a blending stump, and it can make marks. So once you've actually gotten some graphite onto the blending stump, it can actually make marks in between where you want things to go. So some of those lighter grays and so on. Do not go darker, rather switch to ebony pencil if you want to go darker. Use the pencil to put down the strong highlights that exist between the darks and the lights. Switch over to the 4B pencil and start making some of the values darker, or the ebony pencil, like I said a minute ago. In this process, start creating some of those subtle changes that go from, that happen in the dark locations and show some of that reflection. So value and contrast, this is where we want to start to bring it all to life, right? With outlines in place, begin filling in the values. Remember that extreme contrast is the way to create metallic gleam. It doesn't work unless you have those really darks next to those really lights. And we can see that in the spoon all over the place. It's like the light bounces on the curves of the spoon. You'll often have a very dark area right next to a very light area. Don't be afraid. That's what it looks like. Don't try to model it. Many beginners will shy away from those types of mark making because it's pretty bold, but they're essential to make the light appear brighter, like shiny. Remember to use the correct pencils, and clean lines and a lot of observation, and that's going to make this work. So especially look down at the bottom of this drawing of this spoon and look at that like kind of oval rounded area at the bottom of the spoon, and look at all those little bits of white, how they sparkle. Edges and transitions. So this is now at the point where you're going to start to refine your details. The quality of your edges make a huge difference in the realism of your drawing. So they want, in some of these areas it's a little too soft. In other areas they're very sharp, like on some of the tooling that goes at the base of the spoon there, like of the actual bowl of the spoon, and you can see the kind of rows and like fleur-de-lis patterns in there, and there are some very sharp white areas against very dark areas. That is what makes it work. It's an abrupt shadow. It's sharp, it's hard-edged. That is what makes this work. Not like, and then other areas where it will require some modeling, like in the spoon, the bowl of the spoon. Capturing this nuance adds incredible depth to your drawing, and it makes it believable. So don't treat all your edges the same. Vary the sharpness to mimic what you actually see. So practice makes perfect. Don't forget that. You got to keep doing it. That's why we're doing more than one of these. Drawing reflective surface takes practice. Don't get discouraged. If your initial attempts aren't good, that's okay. Do another one. They're small. Each drawing is a learning experience. It's like all the marks that you make will be in the final marks that you make. So you'll know that you'll have to change this or change that because you've already done it a couple different ways that didn't work. And so try drawing different pieces of silverware, a spoon, a fork, a knife. They all offer slightly different challenges. And that's what you can do in the class too. You don't have to stick with the one piece. There'll be silverware out on the counter. You can draw all the different pieces that you want. Experiment with different lighting situations. You can try light from a window. You can bring in, we have small lamps. You can put the lamp down and you can create different hard lights. It's up to you. The most important thing for you to do is enjoy the process of observation and creation. Another thing I suggest at this point is to take photographs so that you have the light in one position. If you're in a room with a big window and the light is changing as the sun goes across the sky, the shadows and the highlights are going to change too. So now you're going to have a completely different drawing 2 hours later than you had when you started. So you want to have those reference photographs. Do not neglect those, and do close-ups just like this where you're moved in very close to really see what you need to see. So tips for drawing realistic. To elevate your drawings, remember that constantly observing is like the biggest key that you can do. So these are two different obviously elements here, but what is it that we see? So we can look at the spoon and we can see that depending on where, like the photograph of the spoon looks one way, but obviously where the person's face or head was while they were drawing the spoon might have been slightly different. So we see the curve of that spoon is a little bit like coming up versus what it looks like in the photograph. The more you look at actual silverware, the better off you'll understand how the reflections work. and how they behave. Don't be afraid to use reference photos, like I said, especially when you're starting out. Turning the photo upside down can also help you focus on the shapes rather than, the reflective shapes rather than the full shape of the whole object. Behold, be bold with your values. Be bold. Don't be afraid. That strong contrast is what makes the metal shine. Experiment with different grades of different pencils. I suggested some, but that doesn't mean that's all you have to do. You can use other ones, softer ones or darker ones, harder ones or lighter ones for lighter reflections. That's pretty much, the way that you'll learn is by doing them over and over. So drawing shiny silverware is a fantastic way to develop your artistic skill, particularly your observational ability and control over value. Remember, it's not just about drawing a spoon. This is a class where you're learning things over and over again. And what hopefully at the end of the day, is kind of like running the race. When you start off the marathon, you don't just say, okay, I've never run a marathon. I'm going to go tomorrow and I'm going to run 26 miles. Not going to happen. You're not going to be able to do it. You've got to work up to it. And what happens then is you build your muscles up. And by the time you're ready to run that 26-mile race, you can do it. This is what drawing is. We have to build up our visual acuity and the way that we kind of position ourselves. It's almost like when you go into the gym and what am I going to do here today? I'm going to do, these crunches. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But you have a plan. And as soon as you get there, you move into action. It's like you're in a mode. You're in like your Zen mode of exercising. That's what needs to happen when you draw. The more you do this, the more you practice, the more you observe, the sooner that you are going to get into that space where you just automatically just click it on. You turn it right on and you're there. You are in Zen drawing mode and you're seeing things and your mind just literally takes over and your drawings are going to be fantastic. Remember, it's about drawing light and reflection on a surface. By focusing on the interplay of light and shadow and the crispness of the edges and the preciseness of your shapes and reflections, you will go a long way to create a stunning drawing. Embrace this challenge. Enjoy the process that you are in, and honestly, let your own creativity shine because it's in there. Let that be the voice that you hear. I am a creative person. Thank you for listening to this lecture on how to draw shiny objects, and I encourage you now to get out there and create some brilliant drawings. Till next time.